Awesome. Okay, good morning, Andrea. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Natasha. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Happy that we're getting on that tail end of things. I am playing around with like this fake background, so I feel like if anyone has suggestions, I'm thinking there's got to be like an easy pull-up screen. That's got to be a thing these days where you can just like have it as a background, so you don't have to use the virtual background. So if anyone has suggestions for those, let me know.
Yes, we can talk about that. I've done quite a bit of research before I painted my office. So, yeah, we can talk about that later. There are a lot of cool options out there.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited for today. Quick recap for those that maybe haven't caught the first two, but in week one, we were really talking about the importance of email. So, not simply just the idea of building a list for a list's sake, but how imperative it is when you want to connect with your audience, when you really want to grow as the expert in their eyes, as well as just all of the savings there are that we're leaving on the table in terms of not just money, but time as well. So, talking about that importance in week one. And then last week, just the basics of getting started. So, the idea of, I know you touched a lot on great things around content and how we can get started with the basics of content. And then we also talked a little bit about the tech and just kind of those core pieces that you need to have in place in terms of the base level of starting your email. So that newsletter, lead magnet, and probably a welcome series to go ahead and get started. I am super excited about today. So I don't know about you, but for me, when we were initially having our conversations and realizing how much crossover we had in terms of what we were seeing with our clients and what we wanted to help with our clients, all this different stuff, when we got to the traps conversation, like I just lit up because it was such an eye-opening moment of realizing, like, yes, I feel like it's so easy in my world to get clients as part of understanding emails, getting started with emails, really getting that list growing and started. That's all awesome. And then the traps come. And I think like so many of what we're going to talk about here today is like mindset traps that are in business in general, but then there's some specific to emails as well. And this is where, I know we're going to talk about growth and how to grow things next week, but I truly think it's like until you can get through this, you really can't get to that. And that's the issue is so many people want to jump to the growth without realizing all the traps that they can fall into. So I'm just really excited for this conversation.
Great. Well, let's kick it off then. Let's go. So, today my portion of the conversation is going to be more about not falling into the trap of wanting to increase your email list for the sake of having a large number of email subscribers on the list that you're sending emails to, and really concentrating on the quality of your list and not the quantity of the email subscribers. So, we all know that freebie emails are an incredibly effective way for grabbing the potential of subscribers, your potential audience, your ideal client. But we also need to realize that when we're creating a way to grow our email list, that people are incredibly attracted to things that are available without any cost. So that would be your buy-in or your freebie, your lead magnet, whatever it is that you like to call it. And the lead magnets do remove the financial barrier that a potential client, your ideal audience might have with working to you by having the lead magnet and by being part of your email subscriber list and receiving the chunks of free information that you provide through your regular newsletters and emails. But you want to make sure that the quality of that subscriber is long standing and long lasting, and not that you're just attracting a bunch of people that are going to want to read that free email the first time and then they're not going to engage with your emails afterward, because that can affect your deliverability rate. So when you're creating your email list, be aware of the short-term interest that some subscribers might have when they're going around collecting freebies. And I know that this is something that I fell into when I became a first-time business owner with my craft shop several years back. I went around and collected every single freebie I could get my hands on. And somewhere I have like a binder that's full of all of the freebies that I printed out, and it's about that thick because I collected every freebie that I could. I wasn't necessarily interested in being part of that newsletter list. I just wanted that free information. So those are things that you need to have in the back of your mind when you're creating and generating your email list. Know that people might not be interested in your expertise or your knowledge, but again, they're just wanting to get hold of that free information. So when you're building or considering building out your email list, consider that your long-term goal is to create an engaged community of subscribers, and be aware that the number of email subscribers that you have on your list doesn't always mean that you're going to have a large number of engaged subscribers on your email list. And I want you to be aware that having a large number of emails that go unopened could affect, as I said earlier, the deliverability of your emails if you have a lot of people that don't open them up. The person that you use to deliver your emails, they could start flagging your emails as spam if you don't have a lot of people open those up. So always remember to focus on the quality of subscriber engagement, not the quantity of emails in your list. Okay, there's so much potential value in your email list. So with all that I've just said, you should consider hiring an expert like Natasha to help you create an email marketing strategy. So now I am going to turn it over to Natasha so that we can get some of her information. This is why I was so interested in becoming a business bestie with Natasha. I've learned so much from her, and I'm so excited that she's going to be able to share with us today her knowledge on email marketing.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up like really, there's a lot in there and such good points. And so, one, it's so interesting because I think there is a two-sided coin to the freebie trap when you're a business owner. So I love the side you're talking about in terms of we get so caught up in, well, A, maybe I just need to create a ton of freebies, or B, is my freebie good enough? And I need to like keep concentrating on it, keep working on it. And so that's one of the things I talk about. I have a whole workshop on how to like build out a lead magnet. And one of the things I mention is there's all these questions and ways to build a really good lead magnet because you do, like you said, want it to attract the right people. So there are questions and things you can do. But at the end of the day, it's that progress over perfection. So simply getting something out there and you can always rework it later is like your best path versus being like, it needs to be the most perfect thing I've ever made. It needs to just like, blow people away. And then you kind of get stuck on never putting it out there in the world. Or, like you said, you get stuck on this idea of like, well, I just need to have so many free things because people aren't going to be interested in what I have to say or want to like work with me if they don't get a whole bunch of free things right away. And so both of those not being true. But the other side of the freebie trap I see with business owners is they themselves want to keep taking in all of this free content when it comes to lots of things in their business, but also when they're trying to build out a strategy for email. And I am not anti-free content. Like I have a whole bunch of free things on my website. I like free things. You can get this is free. You can get very powerful things from free content. But when you are stopping your growth and stopping yourself from taking a next bigger step because you think, oh, I need to keep learning these things. I need to keep showing up to all of these free opt-ins and these lead magnets. And if I just keep collecting them, then I will know how to do emails. Then I will know how to market. Then I will know how to be a salesperson in my business. And it's just not the way it's going to work if you want to see real substantial growth in your business.
And that's really a trap that so I've fallen into several traps when it comes to the freebie emails. As a business owner, I fell into the trap of offering a huge amount of content in one lead magnet as a freebie to grow my email list. And finally, someone said, "Wow, like you have a 16-page lead magnet where really people don't really need to hook up with you. Like they're getting all of this information for free, and that there's no to be continued to it." So that's one trap that I've fallen into. And then the second trap I've fallen into is trying to grow my business simply by going around and collecting all of these freebies and not really understanding in the beginning that a lot of the strategies that I was collecting weren't necessarily the strategies that I needed to grow my business, or that those strategies didn't align with my goals. And so, yeah, those are really things that you have to be aware of as a business owner when you're collecting freebies. Yeah, I had to throw that in because those, and then when I was collecting all of the free information, like it was really, I was left with a binder full of free information and I still really felt stuck. I didn't know, like the freebie got me going, but then I was like, well, what do I do next? So those are definitely two things to consider. One as when you're collecting freebies, and one when you're providing freebies.
Yeah, I actually had to take notes just now because you were saying some things. I was like, yes, so good, so good. So I think going back to your point about, having these lengthy opt-ins or whatever, maybe it's a 16-page PDF, maybe it's like a 2-hour workshop, whatever it might be. And it's really interesting because what I hear a lot too is this idea of like giving away too much for free. And there is that note of maybe, you want to make sure it makes sense to getting to work with you. But the other thing that I think gets missed is these opt-ins, especially when someone's going for free. That is their investment. That's how much time they're willing to put in, basically, is free. And so if you give them something that's huge and massive, they're more than likely not going to finish what you've given them because they weren't ready for that investment. So now they're not going to see that quick win, which is the whole point of this lead magnet to begin with. And if they don't see that quick win, they don't relate that quick win to you, then they're probably not going to take that next step. So that's another reason we want to make sure that these lead magnets are digestible for where the contact is at that point in their journey. And then the other thing you said that I loved was the idea of when we take in all of this free content, especially when we're using it to get the growth phase. So again, if we're using it maybe to do some of the basics, probably lots of free content out there that can help you. When you're using it to get to this next growth phase, very few have I ever seen that are so specific to a business that it works for most businesses. You want either, your own learning, your own, maybe you're paying, whatever it might be, to be very specific to your business. Or like you said earlier, you want to hire people that can then focus on your specific business and bring in those ideas versus being like, here's a free opt-in, let me make it work for my very specific niche that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think we should plan on or talk about doing another LinkedIn series on DIY versus hire. I think we should talk about that at some point in the future, because this really, to me, this really brings a huge, why you should hire versus doing it DIY. You really, really want to work with someone that knows what they're doing, because an email list has so much potential, because it has such potential for such a huge return on investment, such a low cost barrier. You really, really want it to be effective. You really want it to be effective.
Yes, no, I would love that. I think that'd be a great next. There's a few as we've been talking. I'm like, oh, we should actually, talk about this too and all this. But I want us to, yeah, obviously stay focused for the viewers. But Andrea and I will be over here spinning our wheels. Okay, great. So I love it. Yeah, I think we kind of covered that trap of like the freebie and the getting started. I think another thing for me that I notice, and this is more of like an overarching, but it's recognizing what's necessary and needed versus what's vanity. And I think you touched on that earlier when you were talking about the numbers for your list and being like so focused on that number, and just growing it, and then how that can actually end up hurting deliverability, open rates, different things like that. And I would say that is probably one of the biggest things I see with clients is they started building this list and they're like a hawk on it. So they are looking at that number grow. They are looking at an unsubscribe. They're going to look to see who that one unsubscribe is, and then thinking that they need to build a whole strategy based on this one person that unsubscribed. And I completely see this as the barrier to getting to the next stage, because during this phase, it's not quite, I don't want to call it garbage posting, but if you've heard of like the garbage post challenge and just kind of putting things out there, and that's how you grow on social. I think there's a slight bit to that when you're building emails, is you're kind of just building things based off of your best knowledge that you have, the best knowledge of someone you've hired, like the industry standards, all of that. and you're letting that go for a bit. And then you're collecting data once you have a bigger data set. So it's not going to be based on, well, what did Andrea do on my email list? Let me go ahead and build my whole thing around that. I'm going to wait until I have, probably a few months, hopefully a couple hundred, whatever it might be, whatever that number makes sense for your business. And then I'm going to base off behavior and start updating things. But before that point, I'm going to kind of just let some basic things run and not be like keeping an eye hawk on it.
Okay, and that's another thing that I fell into in the beginning when building my email list. I'd see some unsubscribes, and then my feelings were like hurt. I took it so personally when someone would unsubscribe, and then I'd go back to the emails, like combing through it, like what did I say that made these people unsubscribe? So I grew faster when I realized it's not personal. It's nothing against me personally. Maybe they were just after the freebie, so I really had to stop, and I really would like keep my analytics on my email list pulled up, and I would look at it like off and on all day. Yes. And that
Yes.
really, really hindered my growth. It really, really did.
Yeah. And I mean, I see that all the time where we'll get started, we'll have something going, and then I'll get an email from a client where there's, they'll say like, oh, we have these like 2 people unsubscribed the last week or something. And it's just like, okay, like I get it, because it is like you said, it's like that personal connection to your business. And it does, I've had it too. Like I work in emails and I've had that exact same feeling because our business is like so personal to us. But I just want to encourage anyone listening and everyone to know this is not, there might be one person out there that is personally doing it to you, who knows? But in general, unsubscribes are not personal. They might not like the content, but that doesn't necessarily mean your content is bad. That just means they're probably not your person. Now, like I said, eventually, once you get more data, you can start looking. And if there are these mass unsubscribes, lots of people not opening, no engagement, all of that, of course, then there's something maybe with your content that can be updated. But when it's just these one-offs here and there, especially in the beginning as you're growing, because like you see that number way more when it's 1 out of 20 people versus down the road when it's 1 out of 1,000, you're not going to notice. So I get it. I get that feeling, but I really want to encourage everyone listening to just know that is not a reflection of you, and it is okay, and it is going to happen, and it is a good thing that they're no longer on your list because you want the right people there.
Absolutely. You want people that are going to engage with your content because, again, as we mentioned in one of the first episodes, if you will, that you are nurturing your list and you're building a one-to-one connection with the person that opens that up. So you don't want your email list full of people that aren't your people.
Yes, exactly. And kind of sort of in the same topic, but the other big thing I see is when it does come to the design of the email and the content to a degree. I think one of the other biggest hangups I see is getting really stuck on, does this look perfect? Or does this look like all of these emails that I'm seeing from these big names and how they have theirs set up? And this happens consistently with my clients where they see these emails and they assume like mine need to look like this. And I would say a few things is, one, again, when you're getting going, the design of the email is not going to be like the big thing for your reader. It is the content, it is what you're saying, it is what they get out of the email. And so obviously you want it to look nice and not, everything all over the place looking wild. But in terms of like, okay, do I have the perfect layout? Should I have this picture here? Should I do, all that? That is not the most important thing in the beginning. And that's going to stop you from having a consistent, easy method that you can get out and get comfortable with. That's when things start feeling overwhelming and it starts becoming like, well, do I need to get a designer to come and do this? Do I need to get a graphic designer to make this image? What is this looking like? And then it starts getting on a whole thing of like, does this look good on mobile? Does it not? So it's just like, that is one of the biggest things I see where we'll finally get a client up and running on newsletters who hasn't had them going for a long time. That was like their biggest goal. And then all of a sudden they start putting roadblocks because they're like, well, should we try this? Should we try this look? And it's like, not important at this phase, I promise. The other reason I would say is don't get too hung up on it is because in the end, I have seen massive amounts of conversions with the most simple emails that are just text-based. Maybe they have some like highlight, something like that. But in the end, essentially just a text-based email, and it works beautifully. So I know we see some of these really pretty emails and think mine has to look like that. And while that's great to see something aesthetic pop up in our inbox, it really isn't necessary if your goal is actually nurturing and conversion and growing that email list with people that want to be there. And that's the truth.
I agree. I did fall into this trap also when I started my first newsletter, like spending hours like pulling up an email that I've received from a big brand and trying to copy the layout, the format of the email, and it would take hours for me to do this email. And then it got to the point where I hated doing the emails. So I wasn't, because it would take so many hours to do the email. And then the open rate was like, wow, all of the time that I invested in doing this email, my open rate isn't very high. I'm just not going to do it. So after I got over that and decided, like, hey, what I really want to do is communicate this information to my list, like, I've never gone back. My open rates are tremendous with just like maybe a cute little picture and a couple of, bullet points of information or what have you, just the content that I want to provide. My open rates have never been higher as compared to those big brand emails that I tried to copy for my email list. So yes, I
Yes.
definitely agree with that.
And I think, like, even from my own behavior, what I've noticed is, like, do I open big brands emails and be like, oh my God, these are so beautiful? Yes, sure. Like, I think they're beautiful. But it's like when I go to the emails that I'm going to repeatedly open and I see my inbox, I'm not like, oh, well, they send pretty emails. Let me open that. I'm usually like, well, I don't need that or whatever. Versus if there's someone that I know, like, I get a good story out of, even if I know I don't need to buy anything from them right now or I'm not interested, I am opening it because I'm like, oh, I got to hear the story. I have to hear, or like, I know they send good resources. I want to just see what that resource is, or just like that always is way more captivating to me and will get me to open something, even if I instinctively know I am not interested in buying anything from them in this moment.
I agree. I agree. It's always the content I'm going after. It's never like, oh, what pretty picture did they insert in the email, or did they put a video in the email? Let me check and see if there's a video. No, it's the content. Whatever the content is, whether it is the video, whether it is the picture, it's the content that I'm looking for, not the layout. Not
Yes,
at all.
every time. And I think that's a good, and I think we touched on it a little bit last week, but I do think it's worth bringing up again, as you're saying, is like, obviously the content is so important. And I feel like that can be another roadblock for people thinking, well, I don't know exactly what to say, I don't have the right thing. And I feel like that's something we've talked about a little bit, but it's worth clarifying is if you are building a list of your ideal people, of people you're already talking to in other spaces, then more than likely what you're already saying is good. It's great. Like you've already found your people. You just need to keep saying the same thing. So whatever you're saying in other spaces or whatever you're kind of thinking or whatever it is you wish your ideal client knew more about, whatever that is, just speak to that for now. And you're probably going to find that that's actually very powerful and really exciting for them.
I don't know where, speaking from my own personal experience, I don't know where the hang up is when you're first creating your email list, but like really it's you talking to your list. It's you talking one-on-one to the person that opens it, really. Like it's a communication between you and that person. I have found in the beginning that I got so bogged down, nervous, discouraged when creating my email list because I wasn't thinking about it as I'm communicating one-on-one with this person that's opening. Like what do I want to tell this person that's going to open my email? That's really the mindset that you need to have when you're creating your email list. Um, yeah. I mean, am I on the right track with that, Natasha? Or
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely perfect. And again, going back to kind of like what I was saying earlier with the idea of the biggest thing in the traps is looking at vanity metrics or all these other things versus like what is necessary and needed to start out. And so I would say when we go back to that huge ROI and getting those numbers and what that looks like, that is going to be a bigger thing. And we'll get into that next week of like these different automations that you're building and the different type of messaging you're using, and that you do want to be more strategic and all of these things. But to get started and just in the beginning, really is just concentrate on the conversation. Like that is like your main goal. That's all you're really doing here. And I love how you described it. It's like you're having a conversation with your people. Don't overthink it.
I love it. I think that's a great point to end on, to just really
I have
leave
one
it.
little more point for us.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, no, but I think you were bringing it up earlier, and so I just wanted to expand on it and make sure that didn't get missed. But I would say like the final thing that I see a lot of when, again, when like we're getting started and you're like
Mhm.
almost at that cusp, and then people just kind of get into that trap, is when we know to start paying for things, and that can be hiring help. That could be hiring or like paying for the right system. So maybe getting a better CRM that actually has the features you need. Like I said, copywriting help with people like us with strategy. There's all of these things, and I don't want it to seem overwhelming. And it's not as if you need all of these pieces. But again, at some point, you will need help and upgrades in this process because, like most pieces in our business, we are so used and accustomed to having to do so much ourselves, and that's fine. But again, almost every area of your business, at some point, you're going to want to hire out some type of help or automate some type of help or just go beyond, again, just those free doing it myself, all of that yourself kind of mentality is knowing like when do you go to that next stage.
And the differentiation between a hobby and a business is making money. So you want to ensure that you are putting the right ingredients into your business to make money so that your business continues to thrive. And there are some areas of your business that are so important for the growth of your business that you will want to bring an expert in at some point so that the business continues to thrive. For sure. I'm so glad that you made that point.
And I think knowing too, because for me, I've been in this spot of like, well, I have to have so much saved up, or it's just going to cost me so much money, or whatever it might be. And there's obviously different levels of people you can hire. They're going to charge differently. But I would say, even with the people that you might be interested in working with, and maybe you think it's out of reach, never hesitate to have those conversations. Most people, if they're, doing this whole thing, right, are usually down to have some type of conversation with you to give you a better picture of like what working together would look like and pricing and all of that. And it's okay to like maybe consider like, are there payment plan options? Are there ways that I can make this happen that are more attainable for where I'm at right now? Because I do think that's another trap is we just automatically tell ourselves it's a no for reasons that we don't know are actually true. They might be true. You might get to the end of that conversation and there isn't a payment plan option and it truly is just out of budget right now. Great. Like now you know, but don't give yourself that no before you know it's actually true.
And at least going that step and having that conversation with an expert, you never know. They might have some tips or they might have a customized package that can get you closer to where you're needing to go until you're able to afford their expertise. So never shut an idea down or never shut anything down without having a conversation with an expert. I'm glad that you mentioned that, Natasha. Another great point. Another great point. At least have the conversation about, and I have seen that I have met with people that think they need this grandiose strategy, grandiose system, and really that's not what they needed. They needed to talk to an expert to say, no, that's really not where your problem is. Let's look at this. And then it costed a lot less than they thought it would. So, yes, if you have a hump that you can't get over, have a discussion with an expert and just see where that takes you. And Natasha and I would be glad to talk to you.
Yes, yeah, we'll put that in the comments after. But yeah, so thank you for going down that hole with me as well. But this was so fantastic. Like, I really hope that this is helping some people out there because, again, it's what you and I have seen. And so I think it is what, we want people to know is very normal. It happens to the best of us. But that if we want to get to this next stage, and if we want to get to this growth that we're talking about, and we want to get to consistency, we have to recognize these traps and do our best to either avoid them or get ourselves back out of them. If we're in them, we did it, but we can get ourselves back out of there.
And I really enjoyed this. I know it's almost the end. Next week is our last one, but I really felt like this conversation got to the meat of what a lot of entrepreneurs go through. because every single one of the traps that you mentioned, it is something that I fell into in the beginning and really had to work myself out of. So I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I hope the people that are listening gain a lot of value from it. And we did not mention it in the beginning, but if you have any questions, drop them down in the comments or DM us, and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week for part 4, our final part of the series. Thanks so much. Bye, Natasha.
Bye.